Saints, it's me. Buckle up. Here we go. We need to do this in 10 minutes. We'll see if it works. Here we go. I want to thank Jessica for letting me preach this passage of Scripture. And it's not precisely because what it says, because, this is an easy one you can say. It's about hope and about this and this. But I have such love for Jeremiah. When Jessica first told me that we would be abiding with the prophets in the last time of this liturgical year, I was just like, yes. Because, let me tell you something, Jeremiah, as many of the prophets, has a lot to do with figs. Jeremiah, as Amos, you remember we spoke about Amos, he was, a fig, he was picking, he was a fig farmer. Guess what? Jeremiah received the vision from God with 2 baskets full of figs. There's something, right, spiritually here that we can make a salad or we can make a perfect side dish, delicious appetizers. There's something that God is telling us to nourish us through figs and through prophets in this season of our lives. Jeremiah was a reluctant prophet. He grew up, he was young, he was called as a teenager. He was from the tribe of Judah. He was predestined to priesthood. But he was reluctant to speak the words of God to power. But God chose Jeremiah and said, I'll choose you, and I will give you the words that you need to speak to my people who are in exile. Jeremiah's poems and writings and oracles were put together by Baruch. And then this is what we got. Jeremiah is a beloved prophet in Judaism and Christianism and Islam. And he's known as the prophet of sorrows because he wrote the book of Lamentations. Because let me tell you something, Jeremiah teaches us that there's nothing wrong with grieving. There's nothing wrong with crying. That God's still with us when we need to cry, when we are in exile. And especially this text, this verse is a letter, as it says, that Jeremiah wrote for the people of Israel as they were in exile in Babylon. This Bible verse that we're talking about today, got me so excited. In between 2016 and 18, I was part of a working group of the Latin American Council of Social Sciences, and we were working religious and politics to create public policy, to analyze the relationships between churches and institutions and government and public policy and how they affect public life. And there was, in the Latin American Council of Social Sciences, all our cooperations are South-South collaborations. But that year, particularly to our group, we led, a group of American scholars to actually come and be part of our conversations. And of course, there was a lot of, why are we doing this? Why is this happening? Because many things happen here when it comes to religion, the combination of religions and politics in the U.S., as we have been able to see recently. And every time that we went to the call, I will tell them, good morning, Babylon. Because I would refer, and many of scholars and theologians in Latin America would refer to the United States as Babylon. Babylon became an archetype, for struggle, for power, for exploitation of resources in Latin America. We have a history. We have to say this. And this, when we speak about exile, there's many things and many ways we can approach these things. That when we speak about Babylon, there's so many ways we can experience this. Of course, the people of Israel were in exile. They were taken. The temple was destroyed. Everything was in ruins. Their society, their rules, their religion, their language, everything was unstable. And they were longing to be rescued by their loving God. What's interesting about this is that in this oracle, in this message that God sent through Jeremiah, God was not saying, here is the rescue plan. God was saying to them what we just heard. Build houses and live in them. Plant gardens and eat their produce. Take wives, have sons and daughters. Multiply and do not decrease. Seek the welfare of the city. Pray to the Lord on its behalf. These are ordinary verbs. Build, plant, live, and pray. They're not magical. We can say they're mundane, but they're profoundly prophetic. When the world says you're displaced, you're exiled, you're wasting, Jeremiah is saying, leave, take root, love your neighbors, and pray for your place. And this is the promise that we can hear. Exile can mean many things for us today. You know, being an immigrant myself, being an exile in many ways, you know, when we speak about the word exile, it can bring to our minds maybe political refugees, maybe stateless persons. We can speak about economic migrants chasing stability. We can speak about social-cultural refugees and exiles, queer people, strange immigrants living between worlds, and spiritual exiles, people who do not conform to the stage of life where we are. In a way, Christians, we're exiles. We are in the world, but we are not from this world. Haven't we heard that before? Right? Exiles can mean many things. Exile, immigration, traveling abroad, visas, work permits, underdocumented realities. It is so interesting, you know, that approximately there is, according to the United Nations Refugee Agency, 123.2 million people worldwide are displaced forcibly. This is a reality. This includes refugees internally displaced, people's forced out home, and this is an unprecedented number in history. Climate disaster has already driven tens of millions from their homes. Recent reporting and UN analysis link hundreds of millions of people over the last decade to displacement. Americans living abroad, let me tell you, is not a small number. According to the State Department, 5.4 million of Americans live abroad. Interesting, huh? Because of education, because of, you know, businesses, because you just cannot cope with the politics of this nation and you leave to live abroad. You name it, so many reasons. You know, I am an exile myself, and I have been pushed out of my country so many times, too many to my personal preference. You know, but God has always been with me. I don't know when was the last time you live abroad, and if you have, but there are so many approaches to living abroad. And it's so interesting, and I want to make a special invitation for you to question your privileges when you travel abroad. Because there are so many power dynamics. We can speak about gentrification in the cities of Latin America. Just in Mexico, there's 1.5 million of Americans living in Mexico. And your presence, you know, it's so interesting how these experiences of exile, of traveling, of migration change according to your class, to your skin color, to the language you speak, to the economic, you know, your disposable income availability. Because you can be an expat, you can be a digital nomad living in Latin America or somewhere in South America, or you can be a wetback Latino, as I've been referred to as I came here. You can be a refugee living in a refugee camp, or you can be in a resort in this beautiful, magical island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. How do we abide? How do we build relationships? And how do we try to not affect the life of others? Let me tell you something I want to guarantee to you, my dear American friends. Every time you come to Central America, to Latin America, and to the South, we will rejoice that you're there. We will celebrate that you're there. And we will open our houses, and we'll take you to our favorite places, to the places where nature heals us, where we will share with you our amazing flavors and colors, the most delicious of our fruits, and for no reason, we will chase you. We will not persecute you. We will not say you don't belong. We will not dismantle our national health system and starve the poorest and the most vulnerable of our countries, to find and to create an army to get your children in cages and to give them aluminum paper to cover themselves when they're cold. We will rejoice that you're there. We will make you feel that you are one of us. We will celebrate when you speak Spanish or Portuguese or French like we do, or Creole or Patois. You will be welcome into our exiles. You will be celebrated as an exile like we are. We experience exile, my dear CCSMers, and today, as we end this liturgical, as I like to call it, spiritual year, this is a privilege too. I'm thankful with Jessica. You know me preaching on Christ the King or the reign of Christ days. This is time for us to make retrospective. It's time for us to see what we have learned in the last year. And I have special questions for you. What has grown in me this year? What house did I dwell in? What garden did I plant? What might I be called to plant in the next year? Where am I still in exile? And where I might begin to live as though home is here now? So many of us experience exile in many ways. LGBTIQ people who are estranged from their families, excluded from society. We are people who are, growing old, is estranged by their families, excluded from their communities. People who don't fit. If you have been exiled because of your political views this year from your family or from your faith community, where are you in exile today? I have a message for you, and this is just an echo of these ancient words of wisdom that bring life to us. The message for us today is God is present where we are. Whether you were baptized today, what a beautiful sign of hope, isn't it? Life is about beginning and endings. It's about renewal. It's about beginning and starting again. It's hope, it's joy. Or a long-time baptizee, whether stranger or familiar face, God has sent us into this place. And God will never abandon us. Flourishing is possible. Even in a world of displacement, injustice, and instability, the verse build, plant, live, and seek welfare apply to us now. Hope, my dear saints, is not a passive thing. Hope is just not wishful thinking. Hope is just not sitting down and see what God will do about things. That is not hope. Hope asks for action. God is saying to us, live now, love now, and serve now. That is how we are invited to live our hope today, in action. We are entering into a new season. We're in the threshold. Next Sunday, next time we gather in this sacred place, we will be a new version of us. Renewal, new years, new beginnings. It's Maybe we're not ready. Maybe we're just tired. We say, can we wait for a couple of weeks more until for Advent? Or maybe you're excited. I am so excited about next week. All right, it's a new beginning for us. This liturgical year ends, but the journey continues for us. We need to celebrate what we have done. We need to confess what we need to leave behind in the last year. And we need to allow ourselves to imagine with God what is about to happen in our lives, in all of our relationships. What is happening with us? Where is God calling us to serve in the new season? With children rejected by their families? With senior citizens who watch as their neighborhood change and feel invisible here? Maybe helping professionals who relocate and are looking for work and for home? Maybe queer people who need a faith community where they can belong and we can be that family. Are we listening to what God is saying to us in this season? What part of your life have you been wishing away, but you realize will be part of your life? Is there a place of exile in your life that you need to come to terms with? Can you see a spark of life in a painful place in your world? How will this change your view of God, of yourself, and of others in your life? I leave you with these questions. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church.